About the only point in the firefight where my knees got weak because my whole chest was covered in blood.
Coming up.
On the police radio, we heard an officer scream.
How many times you been shot?
Five times.
Sheriff? Pete's been shot.
Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Watson.
On the police radio, we heard an officer scream.
Pete came up on the radio and said, "I've been 18. We translated it real quick. I've been shot."
I've been 18 multiple times, HQ.
When that comes up on the radio, things change in a hurry. They really do. If Pete Soulis was in trouble, it was a bad deal. There's not a policeman out there that doesn't know how fast his police car will go, right? Sometime, midnight shift, somewhere, he's found out. I knew how fast my car went. 120, maybe. And I looked down as I crossed Bay Meadows Road, and it was reading 131 miles an hour. Now, I've never had it explained to me how that car ran 10 miles an hour faster that night than it ever had. Something else was pushing.
You know, I thought the vest had failed. You know, I thought the round had penetrated and gone right in my chest. So I reached my hand in there to fill the wound, and I realized that no, it was not. The vest did its job, thank goodness. You know, it was just a bad abrasion. I could hear units coming 360. I mean, you could hear miles away, and I mean, I can't explain. And words don't describe the relief of having your people coming to you like that.
I had seen him earlier in the evening. I was probably less than a half a mile away from him when we discovered it was probably him. I was the first one to arrive on the scene.
Pete, how many times you been shot?
Shot me. Five times.
Pete was really angry, is what he was. He was just ready to control the situation. At that point, I had no idea what had happened. I knew from what I saw that Pete had been shot.
All right, now you need to calm down. Now, where's the suspect?
He's in the car.
All right.
He's in the car.
All right. Keep an eye on the suspect. HQ 234, shot in the arm and legs, send rescue.
The suspect, when I saw him, was laid over in the front seat of his car. Once I saw him and looked inside the car, and listening or hearing the breaths, that he wasn't going to survive. People started arriving at that point.
I responded to where he was. Of course, the immediate concern was, how is he, and, you know, is he okay?
Looks like he got into some action. Pete? Hey, Pete. Chest, forearm, shoulder. Where else?
My phone. It's in the car. I need to call Sheriff.
Pete had been shot several times, but he was still standing. And being the tough guy he was, he refused to lay on the gurney for the rescue unit that arrived.
I had my faculties to the point that I knew there were several things I wanted to do. Number one, I wanted to call my wife.
Your wife wife is trying to study Officer Soulis.
Hey, babe. I wanted to call you before you heard it on the news.
He called and I was slightly annoyed because he knew I was studying for my midterms.
I'm okay, but I've been shot. They're fixing to take me to the hospital.
I thought he was messing with me because Pete is always messing with me.
And there was just absolute silence on the phone. And I'm actually looking for a little sympathy here, you know, and I'm not getting it.
Really? What, did you shoot yourself? Hi, Cheryl. Sandy, hi. What's going on?
She asked me if I'd shot myself and was too embarrassed to call anybody else but her.
Yeah, Pete's okay. He's been shot. Look, rescue's here. We're gonna send someone to pick you up, okay?
That's when the reality of the fact that Pete had actually really been shot, I was trying to grasp that. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I feel frozen and the whole room is moving around me. It's almost like spinning.
5 minutes after that phone call was made, there was a unit at my house picking her up and driving her to the hospital. When I was behind the car, I honestly felt like this wound in the thigh was a fatal wound. What had happened is that round had hit a quarter, and it had bent that quarter in half and driven the quarter and the projectile through my leg, and the muscle would spasm. It would fill it with blood, spasm. That's where I was getting leakage. They just got me to the hospital as quick as they could. I didn't lay down. I sat on a gurney. I just was not sure I was going to be able to get back up. Until I got to the hospital, and you know, I really wasn't sure if I was going to make it. What mattered to me that I was alive, and that I was going to be able to go home to my family, and that he wasn't going to be able to hurt anybody anymore. And that was really my primary concern at that point. But you're not expecting to have to use deadly force, you know? And you may go 25 years and never get involved in it, or you may walk out today and as soon as you come out in the parking lot, you're in it. It's that dynamic and it's that spontaneous.
The suspect that shot Pete died in the front seat of his car.
Suspect's name in this incident was Joseph McGrotha, and he was from Warner Robins, Georgia.
That particular evening, on that October night, we were trying to figure, why is this guy here?
We received a phone call from investigators from Jacksonville, Florida, after I was assigned a homicide investigation concerning the death of Kenneth Koski. The investigators had advised that one of their police officers had been involved in a shooting incident with a citizen from Warner Robins.
What's the name?
My first thought was, I pray that the officer is all right. My second thought would be, why in the world would one of our citizens, a Warner Robins citizen, be involved in such activity? Joseph McGrotha stated that he would never go back to prison again, no matter what, even if it involved taking the life of a police officer and fleeing the scene.
This is Detective Macro.
Mr. McGrotha would be someone that we would want to interview to determine, Could he have possibly been involved in our murder? His rap sheet included theft and burglary and things of that nature, and he resided within proximity to where our incident in Warner Robins had taken place. It was learned that Mr. McGrotha attended a party. This party was located at a local bar within Warner Robins, which was also within somewhat close proximity to where Mr. Koski lived. It was said that Mr. McGrotha was one of the last to leave the party. He had become highly intoxicated. As he walked home, he did jump a fence. His favorite t-shirt got hung up on the fence and tore as he jumped to the ground. Joseph now is in an apparent rage. He is intoxicated to the point that he does not have a good grasp of his conduct. He is using aggression that is just, for whatever reason, built up through the years or whatever time period, and now has just now exploded out into the community. And now he is confronted by a homeowner who has the audacity to question his activities.
What are you doing? Sit down.
The murder, I think it was out of a drunken rage. It was an act of spontaneous violence. I don't believe he planned it. I think it just happened. He then traveled to Cocoa Beach, Florida, where he stayed in a hotel or motel at that location. Mr. McGrotha then traveled north on 95. He stopped at a location in Jacksonville where he pulled his car up to a phone booth.
The suspect, he'd done some prison time. This guy had a fairly lengthy criminal record, and I had no knowledge of this.
Jacksonville Sheriff, sit up right now and show me your hands.
It makes sense that he would pull over where he did because he'd have a good visual of that sandwich shop, which they get robbed all the time. And the interstate being on his left, I do believe he was in the car getting his liquid courage. He was gonna finish that beer, he was gonna exit that car, he was probably gonna rob that sandwich shop, run back across Emerson Street, be in his car, and be on the interstate and in Georgia in about 15 minutes. What is embarrassing for me, actually, is that I didn't see that. I mean, I didn't put two and two together.
Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go sit back in the car. I want you to dump the beer on the ground. I want you to wait there till I get back.
He was under the assumption that I went back and ran his driver's license.
NCIC, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Gulf 234. Need a 2829 on a Joseph McGrotha.
234, be advised NCIC is currently down.
When he checked his ID through National Crime Information Center, NCIC was down at the time and nothing was able to be found about McGrotha.
Little did he know that that's all he had to do was be patient and sit still, and he could have been down the road.
Him knowing what he knew and me not knowing who he was, that ID was very important to him. So that would explain his actions at the car, you know, and that would explain his attack.
I think that Mr. McGrotha felt that law enforcement must be savvy to the fact or aware of the fact that he had in fact been involved in a murder in Warner Robins, Georgia, and he had stated to his friends and his family previously that he would not go back to jail no matter what, even if it involved taking the life of a police officer and fleeing the scene.
Keep your hands up. Show me your hand, Joseph. Where I can see him, I don't see your hands. Show me your hands. Show me your hands.
So when I appeared at the window, I was a threat to him. I was prison. I was incarceration. And he wasn't going to put up with that. He put 5 rounds on me before I got a single shot off on him. Those 5 rounds motivated me to keep it lit my fire. I was prepared to go with him all the way to the end. And I don't think he was expecting that.
On the night of October 19th of 97, at approximately 10 o'clock, I heard a call go out that an officer had been shot. And I responded to the scene. It was a gas station that was closed up at that time of night, and it was right beside a major highway in Jacksonville, Florida. My role at that scene was to document the scene itself, the entire scene, to document the location of every piece of evidence, to document them with measurements as well as photography. You could tell by the placement of the casings that there was a lot of movement around on Pete and the victim's part of this shootout. I also found 2 9mm semi-automatic handguns in the suspect's vehicle. One of them, I do recall, had the hammer back on it and it was ready to fire. There was even blood from the suspect on the hubcap of the tire that he was crouched behind when he was shooting at Pete, which indicated to me that Pete had already hit him at least one time. I could take every piece of that evidence and put it exactly back where it was that night, even though it was 17 years ago. That's what these scenes do. All your evidence tells the story.
This is Detective Micro.
When we received the name of Joseph McGrotha as being the citizen from Georgia that had been involved in this police shooting, I traveled to Jacksonville, met with the investigators, had the opportunity to view the evidence. We located a pair of boots that I believed to have been responsible for leaving the pattern and the shoe impression at the back door of Mr. Koski's house. We were able to meet with the medical examiner. She was able to provide us a vial of blood that we could then use for potential DNA evidence that we found on the cigarette left within Mr. Koski's home.
Hey, Mike. Might want to check this out.
As a result of the evidence discovered, we believed we very possibly did have the person identified that was responsible for this murder. Approximately 6 months later, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab contacted our department and confirmed with conclusive evidence analysis there would have been a 1 in 1 billion chance that someone other than Joseph McGrotha had smoked that cigarette that was left within the Koski home. Joseph McGrotha, beyond a doubt, was the person that committed the murder of Kenneth Koski in Georgia. I'm very sorry for the Koski family. You know, he was living his normal, peaceful life, an exemplary neighbor, retired Air Force, a widower, a father of 3 grown children that were living very successful lives, and just living a good quality life that was suddenly disrupted in his sleep and ultimately ended.
I had been involved in investigating many police-involved shootings, and I had never been to one with this many shots fired.
Out of the 15 he fired, 5 hit me, and the other hit the building and the vehicle around me. This firefight went on for 1.5 minutes.
That's a long time for shots to be going on. I think statistically most gunfights last, like 3 to 5 seconds and it's over with, and shots fired maybe 5 to 6.
In a deadly force incident, as a law enforcement officer, right or wrong, you're initially listed as a homicide suspect.
Every incident of the crime scene is looked over and over and over again to make sure that this shooting was done justifiably. I mean, he could have faced prison time for that matter if it wasn't justifiable.
The evidence tells the story. The evidence will either prove or disprove one version or the other of a story, and all the shell casings from the suspect's gun as opposed to Pete's gun matched the story, which told us there was a shooting back and forth this way.
The conclusion of the investigation was it was a justifiable homicide. I knew everything I did was justified. I have gotten this profession for the right reason. I'm not going to jeopardize myself or a citizen or an innocent I just know that's who I am, so if I have to act, I'm definitely going to be justified when I do it. And I have no problems going home and sleeping with that.
My phone. It's in the car. I need to call Cheryl.
I don't think Pete ever feared for his life. I don't think he was thinking about himself other than assessing his wounds so that he could actually do what he felt like he needed to do, which was, you know, stop this person from hurting anyone else. He didn't have any surgery, and they didn't put any stitches in. I guess the wounds like that have to heal from the inside out.
Hey.
Well, what are you gonna do now?
What do you mean?
What kind of job are you gonna find?
What are you talking about?
You're not going back to work now.
As soon as I can, I am. Look, I don't mean to worry you.
I was back to work in about 2 to 3 weeks. And right back at it.
Pete is that type of guy. He loved police work and he wanted to be back at work. And he did it. It's amazing.
The first time I saw him was back in patrol, and it was a good day. We hugged.
He's my hero, okay?
I walked into a situation that was, I had no earthly idea till it was on me. I didn't know, and I was absolutely caught off guard. It was complacency that kind of put me in this position that I was in on that evening. I made those approaches, and subconsciously I'm seeing red flags. I'm seeing things that are telling me, hey, this isn't right, but I didn't act on it. Shame on me. You know, I should know better. Fortunately, because of my training, I was able to recover and survive this incident. You know, it helps me every time I talk about it. It brings